So apparently me just doing these videos now is just the kiss of death for somebody in the division that I just talked about, because let alone all of the guys that have gotten traded right after I do a video on that division, we now have, and I'm not even gonna get near covering the Mike Clevenger situation, so I am so sorry if you're a fan of an NL West team, because I'm about to murder somebody's career just by talking about them. We're going division by division, breaking down every team's offseason so far. We've done the NL and AL East, the NL and AL Central, and today we cover the NL West. This is Smarter Baseball, where we deep dive into everything going on throughout Major League Baseball. If you enjoy the content, make sure you show your support by liking the video, subscribing to the page, and turning on notifications. Go ahead and follow on social medias. Now, let's go ahead and get into the NL West and break down every team's offseason. We're going to look at the players that are leaving these teams and the players that are coming in. We're not covering guys getting re-signed. That's basically the team staying the same. And I'm not going to cover guys progressing, coming back from injuries, regressing, anything like that. We're just looking at the significant players that were leaving the team, somebody who played 30, 40-ish games, had somewhat of a role on the team, or maybe guys that due to injuries or something didn't play, but they've been in the league for a while, so there's somebody that we should relatively kind of talk about. And for guys coming in, we're looking at players that are projected by the Fangraphs roster resource page, which is an awesome place to go check out info on every team. Projected by this page to make the 26-man roster and be a part of the Major League Club. Once we do that, we'll take a look and see, just based on these moves, guys coming in, guys coming out, did this team get better, get worse, or stay relatively the same? So first, we're going to go ahead and let's cover the Arizona Diamondbacks. We have leaving here the main one. Dalton Varsho goes out in the big trade with Toronto. Outfielder, 151 games, 745 OPS, 106 WRC plus, but 4.6 FWAR because this dude's defense is off the charts. Now, we'll go ahead and get into him a little bit later when we cover this team as a whole, but I mean, that WAR right there, 5 is what WAR deems as all-star level. So Varsho put up a lot of value this last year. You also have bench guys here, Cooper Hummel, Alcantara, Stone Garrett, Luplow, all kind of filling some of these bench, spot start kind of roles. Not a whole lot of value really being lost here. And you've also got a good handful of relievers, Marana, Smith, Poppin, Kennedy. Marana probably being the big one here, 4.5 ERA, but a 3.26 FIP, only 14 innings, so very small sample size there. Again, not anything from this bullpen that's like a huge loss here. As we get into the guys that they've brought in, we've got coming over in that trade, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., 121 games last year, 743 OPS, 114 WRC plus, but the slugging was noticeably down this last year. He doesn't bring a whole lot defensively, so his offensive numbers are going to be the big thing for him. See if that bounces back this next year. You also have Evan Longoria coming in from San Francisco, 89 games, 766 OPS, 115 WRC plus, 1.3 FWAR. So over the course of a season, should hit that 2 that's needed for what WAR deems starter level player. Still has something in the tank there. As old as he is, and we'll get kind of to his role on this team in a second, like there's still value there from Longo. Gabriel Moreno, the big piece coming over in the trade, 25 games, 733 OPS, 113 WRC plus, debuting last year. He should eventually take over this catching spot, and we'll get to how much value this could potentially be bringing over here. covered him in that trade. The very, very contact-heavy hitter. Like I said, we'll get to it in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Kyle Lewis also comes over. Now, Lewis is a bit of a disappointing story, as I'm alluding to here. I've seen over the last couple of years, being a Mariners fan, only 18 games this last year, did not make much of it, but he has dealt with a lot of injuries over his time. Major knee issues, both throughout the minors and then in his time up at the major league level. When this dude has been healthy, he is a very, very solid player, winning the 2020 Rookie of the Year. Getting way ahead of myself here. What he can bring offensively, very, very solid. Good defense out there. It was just kind of sad watching this last year. Like, he could barely run down to first base. So hoping that he can get back healthy. I'd love to see him bounce back. Diamondback fans, I'm sure, even in this crowded outfield here, you would love to see that as well. I've also got a couple relievers coming in here. Again, I mean, some solid numbers from Castro, not anything too crazy, but gonna replace some of these guys that are coming out from the bullpen here. So now let's get into it with the Diamondbacks. Varsho comes heading out is a ton of value for sure. Like we said, that 4.6 F-WAR, nearly all-star level production from him, just going off of WAR, which is not the end-all be-all by any means. But this was at a very crowded position. You've got some younger, arguably, I guess, higher potential guys. Like, yes, this is value, but it is value that you could give up, and especially what he was giving you more of, which was the defense. Arizona's outfield defense was really, really good last year. This was something that they could sacrifice and still keep a good amount of. Moreno comes in to potentially, and that's going to be the big word here with him, still only playing in the 25 games in the major leagues, debuting last year. He could potentially fill a very big need for this Diamondbacks team from last year, but that all is a big if. I mean, if he turns into the player that he should be, this is a great move for the Diamondbacks. But again, that is all potential. He has to develop into the guy that we think he's going to be. Gurriel and Longoria are going to both fill some roles on this team. Gurriel being really, like we said, that bat first outfielder. If he's over in left field, which it's slotted for him to be right now, you're not super worried about the defense, but hope that the offense bounces back a little bit more. He's a guy not going to strike out a ton, but not walking a lot either. He's just up there swinging the bat, and I mean, when he does make contact, he makes pretty good contact. So he's going to be a bit of a streaky hitter there. When he's getting good contact, it's going to be really great, but he's probably going to put some balls in play that you're like, why are you swinging at that? And Longoria still probably can give you roughly everyday kind of production, but he's going to be more of that like clubhouse leader for this team, really help a lot of these young guys that are coming up, kind of that stuff that we can't really measure how much that's going to make an impact. So I think all that said, swapping out some bench pieces, some relievers, all of that, I'd say this team is relatively the same talent-wise, but they're more balanced. You don't have quite as much of this focused in the outfield. You spread it out to catcher. You get Longoria to fill in kind of this DH, some spot starts at third. Like, I think this keeps this team relatively the same, but much more balanced, and that could potentially have them playing much better this next year. Next, we'll go ahead and go to Colorado. Big losses heading out here. You've got shortstop Jose Iglesias, 118 games, 708 OPS, 85 WRC plus. Really just kind of giving you defense at this point. Not anything you're too worried about leaving. Connor Joe also gets traded out, 111 games. I don't know where I saw an 8 there. 697 OPS, 87 WRC plus, 0 F-WAR. So, I mean, again, WAR's not everything, but according to that, right at just replacement level player. The fact that he's getting 111 games kind of tells you everything you need to know about the Rockies here, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Outfielder Sam Hilliard, Dom Nunez, Garrett Hampson, all again kind of these bench, utility, just role player kind of guys that you're not super worried about leaving. Chad Cole, 67 game. Oh my God, dude. Me with these numbers right now, and I'm sure I just butchered his name too. 27 starts, 137 innings, 5.72 ERA, 5.26 FIP. Very back end of a rotation, not anything you're super worried about leaving. I keep saying that a bunch. Relievers, Estevez, Oberg, Colome, all leaving here. Again, for this Rockies team, it's not anything that you're all that worried about having to lose. So then the Rockies bring in Harold Castro, gonna probably take over one of those spots in the middle of that infield there. 120 games last season, 681 OPS, 94 WRC plus, but negative 0.4 FWAR. So I'll kind of get to comparing him and Iglesias here in a second. Connor Siebold comes over. Oh, those damn Costco hot dogs, dude. Connor Siebold comes over, 5 starts, 18 and a thirds innings. Numbers were bad. Basically only been in the majors for a little bit of time and has not done much with it so far. And then you've got, again, just a couple relievers coming over here. Potentially some solid numbers here, but Johnson, very small sample size, 14 and a thirds innings last year. The 2.76 FIP, though, is very promising. Suter, 66 and 2/3 innings, 3.78 ERA, but the FIP up at 4.4. And I mean, really, again, like for the Rockies here, you're not losing much. I mean, Iglesias was kind of an everyday guy. Joe was kind of an everyday guy, but not a ton of value there in either of them. And you bring in Castro to kind of replace Iglesias, but neither one of them were really giving you all that much offense. And clearly, just kind of from looking at this, Castro is giving you even less defense than Iglesias was giving you some. So that's kind of downgrading there. And just, there's roster turnover going on here, but that's at best. You're not really bringing anybody in. You're not addressing a lot of the problems on this team. This team ends up staying pretty much the same, which is bad. So let's just go ahead then. We'll go from the bottom of the division up to the top with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Main loss here, you've got shortstop Trey Turner, 160 games, 809 OPS, 128 WRC plus, 6.3 FWAR. This dude is just almost everything you can want out of the shortstop position there. That is a huge piece to have to replace on this team. Cody Bellinger, outfielder, 144 games, 654 OPS, 83 WRC plus. Far cry from the MVP numbers we've seen from him in the past, but still the 1.7 FWAR, giving you some value there defensively in center field. And we'll kind of get to him in a second, along with Justin Turner here at third base. 128 games, 788 OPS, 123 WRC plus, 2.4 FWAR. So still giving you very solid everyday numbers over there at third base. You've got Alberto, Pilar, Gallo, Rios, all kind of filled these bench type roles for him over there. Not a ton of value for any of them really. Rios gave you some pretty good offensive numbers in a small sample size, but that's about it there. Again, on guys I'm just not even going to bother touching off of the field here. That very poor choice of words there. Oh my God. Trevor Bauer, what he does on the field, very, very good. He did not play this last year with everything going on, but that is, again, potentially a really good pitcher on the field that you're losing here. Guys that did play, though, Anderson, Heaney, both very solid in that rotation. Anderson, 30 games, 178 and 2/3 innings, 2.57 ERA, 3.31 FIP, 4 FWAR. So, I mean, that's a 2, 3 at the worst in some really good rotations across baseball here. Heaney, 16 games, 72 and 2/3 innings, but a 3.10 ERA, 3.75 FIP. Again, both just very, very solid. Like, these guys being your like third, fourth starters in these rotations is phenomenal to have. You've also got a good handful of relievers here. Martin, Price, Kimbrel, all of these guys that pitched a decent amount here. I mean, Martin the lowest at 24 and 2/3 innings, but you're talking 1.13 ERA, or 1.46 ERA, 1.13 FIP, 2.45 ERA, 3.88 FIP, 3.75 ERA, 3.23 FIP. These are very, very solid relievers that the Dodgers have leaving here. Who do they bring in? JD Martinez, 139 games last year, 789 OPS, 119 WRC plus, gonna fill that DH role. These numbers, again, not quite what we've seen from him in the past, but hopefully there's still some of this, most of this here this next season, or at least they have him kind of a more limited role, just play more to his strengths at this point later in his career. Miguel Rojas comes back over, Jason Hayward also coming in. Both of these guys probably going to be more kind of defensive replacements at this point. Neither one really giving a whole lot of offense this last year. Noah Syndergaard, an interesting one to come into this rotation. 25 games, 134 and 2/3 innings, 3.94 ERA, 3.88 or 3.83 FIP. Dude, I cannot get these numbers right to save my life right now. Oh my God. The 2.2 F-WAR. This has kind of been some of these guys that the Dodgers have been bringing in, like Anderson and Heaney this last year, that there's still, you know, probably a good amount in there, and they're going to find something to try to capitalize on this and bring these numbers down even more. And I might as well kind of get into this here. We'll cover Fireisen real quick. 24 1/3 innings, 0 ERA, 1.67 FIP last year. Very, very solid reliever. Really good there in that sample size. For the Dodgers here, though, Trey Turner is just such a huge loss, man. I mean, that's tops of the league. I mean, we saw the contract that he signed with the Phillies there. You still are probably having some potential value in Bellinger and Turner this next year. Like I said, Bellinger is not the player that he used to be, but did a whole video on him. Maybe there's still something there. He can get back relatively close to those numbers. If you want more on that, go check out that video. Turner's still giving you solid numbers. So, I mean, potentially you're still losing some everyday type of players there. You bring in Martinez, but again, how much is he going to have left still in the tank in that DH role? And then you're just losing more pitching that you're bringing in. I mean, two of these guys that you bring in kind of revitalize, and now they leave, and you're hoping to do the same with Syndergaard, but then that's, you know, you're hoping that you can kind of turn Syndergaard into like Heaney's numbers here last year, like Anderson at the absolute best, but then you're only really replacing one of those two that's leaving. So overall, man, for the Dodgers, just this is too much. I think that they're losing on paper to say that they stay even relatively the same, but I'm sure they're going to replace these with some of these prospects and guys that they develop and all of this, because that's just what the Dodgers have been doing recently. So we'll see. I say they got worse, but they probably end up proving me wrong. Next up, we have the Padres. Really, the guys leaving here again. I'm just getting so far ahead of myself in this video. Alfaro, 82 games, 90 WRC plus, is kind of more of that like bench platoon type catcher. Profar played everyday role, 152 games, 722 OPS, 110 WRC plus. Most of that OPS was on base percentage, 2.5 F-WAR. Very, very solid everyday guy there for you. Drury comes over in the trade. Bell comes over in a trade. Both of these guys, I mean, again, just kind of filling in some of these spots. Drury gave you more offensively there, 105 WRC plus. Bell really struggled in the time that he came over, a 79 WRC plus. And then you have Myers too, who's kind of more in this bench type role, but 104 WRC plus, very, very solid. Kind of talked about him with the Reds in the NL Central video. Clevinger, again, not going to talk about off the field what's going on the field. Him and Manaea both kind of underperforming this last year. 23 games, 114 and a thirds innings, 4.33 ERA, 4.98 FIP for Clevinger. Manaea, 30 games, 158 innings, 4.96 ERA, 4.53 FIP. Again, both of them kind of underperforming, more back of the rotation guys there, kind of that like fourth spot in the rotation. So you didn't quite get what you were hoping out of them. Couple relievers leaving here as well. So Padres then go out and they sign just their fourth shortstop to add to this team, Xander Bogaerts. 150 games, 833 OPS, 130 WRC plus, 6.1 FWAR last season. I mean, that's a guy that if you have a spot to add him, you're more than happy to add him. We're just talking this next year. We can talk about the end of this contract, what that's going to mean. But Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, both these guys come over to kind of we'll get again into this more, but kind of platoon, I think, in that DH position. The righty DH, the lefty DH there, Cruz and Carpenter. Cruz struggling a bit this last year, 85 WRC plus in 124 games. Carpenter making the most of his comeback there with the Yankees. 47 games with a 1.139 OPS, 217 WRC plus. That could potentially be a very, very good DH platoon there. Or we'll see both of these guys a little bit older. Maybe, Carpenter ends up looking a little bit more like Cruz this last year. Yet to be seen. Engel comes over to fill an outfield bench role. Lugo is an interesting one here for the rotation. Didn't start games last year, 62 games, 65 innings pitched, but a 3.6 ERA, 3.76 FIP. If you can get those numbers in a rotation, that's a very, very solid starter to have in that rotation there. Overall here for the Padres, bringing in Bogaerts is a huge add. Like I said, if you can find a spot to add a guy like this, to add this bat to the lineup, you go ahead and do it. Especially for this team that's, trying to take over this top spot in the division from the Dodgers. You get Cruz and Carpenter in to platoon this DH spot, which really is kind of one of the only spots that they had this room to add guys. I mean, Profar, Drury, Bell are all very solid players. You could bring them back to add depth, but at the money that you would have to pay them as free agents here, you don't really have the room to do that. Bringing in Bogaerts, you already have to now bump over Kim, who was a very good defensive shortstop, to second base. That bumps Cronenworth from second to first. You have Machado over at third, who I guess has and potentially still could play shortstop, maybe. And then you have Tatis, who, whatever going on with the injuries, and then now you have the suspension, but he was a shortstop too. He's probably now playing in the outfield, which then that's for Profar, who, if he's going to be out in left, when Tatis comes back, either he goes into left or you have Soto go over to left, Tatis is in right. Neither one of them is taking over center field probably for you. Where does Profar fit into the outfield there? And then for Drury and Bell, where do they fit into this infield? I mean, I guess you could have one of them play first base over Cronenworth, but he's only getting paid like $4.2 million this year. Still only in arbitration, very team controllable. Are you really going to pay one of these guys when you could just keep Cronenworth there? I think you just don't have a whole lot of spot for these guys. Clevinger and Manaea underperformed this last year. We're back of the rotation. Now, kind of yet to be seen how Lugo does in the rotation, but if he can give you relatively close to the numbers that he was as a reliever, as a starter, then he's going to be better than either of these guys. And I mean, you just slot him into this rotation that you could probably use another arm or two, but Man, overall, I think the Padres do just end up getting better here. Like, these are kind of just some good problems to have here, and there are still some question marks. It's almost kind of a like MLB The Show team where you're just like, well, I can just plug him in there and he's gonna go here. But I mean, I think overall they do get a little bit better here. Let's go ahead, talk about our last team, the San Francisco Giants. You've got Evan Longoria, Brandon Belt, both on their way out. Guys that were supposed to be in more of these everyday roles, but you get 89 games out of Longoria, 766 OPS, 115 WRC plus, the 1.3 FWAR there in a little over half of a season. At least probably a solid everyday guy. We already kind of talked about him there with Arizona. Brandon Belt, 118 games, 652 OPS, 87 WRC plus, but 2 FWAR. So maybe the bat's not quite there, and I mean, he's going over more to be a DH with Toronto, but at least was giving you solid value out of there. You could put him out there every day, and he's not costing you much. La Stella, Vossler, Dean, all of these guys, kind of Jones in more of these bench roles, which again, as we kind of talked about with most of these teams, bench backup guys all end up kind of rotating through for a lot of teams. It's not anything huge to address. Carlos Rodon is, though. 31 games last year, 178 innings, 2.88 ERA, 2.25 FIP, 6.2 FWAR, well above the 5 for All-Star level there. I mean, a bona fide ace in the Cy Young discussion. This is a huge, huge loss for any team. You've also got 7 relievers coming off of the board here. A couple of these guys with decent, if not good numbers. I mean, Young, 2.39 ERA, 2.96 FIP, and 26 1/3. Very good numbers. Garcia, a little bit lower numbers there, 3.74 ERA, 4.27 FIP, but that's still pretty decent numbers for a reliever. None of the rest of these guys had anything that's going to blow you away, but for the guys they bring in then, the Giants go and add Mitch Haniger, 57 games last year. He struggled with injuries over his career, but a 737 OPS, 113 WRC plus. Both him and Michael Conforto, who missed all of last season, if they're healthy, they're very solid players, but we'll get into that in a second. Sable's projected to come over, hasn't debuted yet, but he's projected to be the backup catcher, so yet to be seen with that. Now they bring in Sean Manaea from the Padres. Like we said, kind of underperformed. Hopefully he can bounce back for you guys this year. But Ross Stripling, 32 starts or 32 games last year, 134 1/3 innings, 3.01 ERA, 3.11 FIP, 3.1 FWAR. Very, very solid, like 3 guy, possibly a 2 in a rotation. That's definitely a good add to this rotation. Taylor Rogers, Luke Jackson, both pretty solid relievers coming over as well, hopefully shoring up this bullpen. But overall for the Giants here, Haniger and Conforto should probably give you more everyday value than Longoria and Beltwood if they're healthy for a full season. And that's going to be the big thing, I think, here for them. Both of them coming off of and dealing with injuries over these last seasons or two. Whether you can get a full season out of them is going to be the big question mark here. If they do, I think they give you more value, but that's a big enough question mark that I think we just end up kind of calling this a wash on that. And then this comes down to really like the bullpen's going to stay about the same. You know, you lose a couple decent relievers, you bring in a couple, you got some other guys leaving that I don't think you're too worried about. For the Giants though, man, I would rather have Rodon, a bona fide top of the order ace, than to bring in Stripling and Manaea. Stripling, very, very solid. Again, helps shore up a rotation. Yet to be seen if Manaea bounces back very much. But I would rather have the bona fide ace there than a couple of these guys more in the middle of the rotation. That's just me. I think the Giants end up getting just a little bit worse here. What do you guys think about these? Are you a fan of these teams? You're going to know them a lot better than I do. I am a Mariners fan. I watch the AL West. That we're going to go ahead and cover next. But comment down below, what do you think about these teams' off seasons? Did they get better? Did they get worse? Leave me your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, enjoy the channel, show your support, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Anything you can do to support, I greatly appreciate it. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the time spring training starts. Let's see if we can blow past that number. I know you guys can help me out here. Appreciate all of the support. We've got our one final video in this series coming up next, the AL West. If you want to check out all of the other videos in this series we've done, I'll link the playlist at the end of this video so you can check them all out. Hope you have an awesome day. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.